Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining a conversation with artist Amy Gabbert. Hello, Amy.
Hello.
Thank you for joining your sixth Zoom of the day and enabling us to help introduce the group show artists to the rest of the world, because we can't introduce you to them in person. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Tell us what piece you are currently exhibiting in the 7th annual group show.
I am exhibiting what I am calling a fiber piece, which is a little different from previous work that I have exhibited with the Evanston Made show. So I've really been trying to push myself to work outside of the structure of the weaving loom. And so the piece is, when the weirder I get, the happier I am. So it's a little weird, and I'm pretty excited about it, actually.
And by weird, do you mean you're using different colors, different objects in the weaving? How are you getting weird?
Well, I think I'm trying to break out of the rectangle of what weaving is. So it's interesting because the piece that I submitted began as actually a sketch. I practiced kind of a new technique, made a few things, and then decided that I wanted to try my own thing. And I just thought, like, okay, I'm going to make something really quick and then be done with it just to get it out. Well, I started to make it, and then I really was dissatisfied with it. But I also had spent so much time on it that I couldn't just walk away. So I basically then kept building on it, and was very satisfied with it in the end. And interestingly enough, it sort of feels like a very painterly process for me working this way. So I'm working with this.
I mean, for fiber, it has a very painterly aspect. When we share this interview, we will have a big picture of it. It looks very painted. It looks landscapey.
Right. So it's funny because I should, at some point I'll figure it, I'll share, like, maybe on my Instagram, like, the process of it, my little sketches, and then where it started out and where it ended. But on the backing of it, so when you work on a loom, your structure is set at the beginning. You have your loom and your warp threads, and you're working within those confines. So this started out as, a shape that was probably like this big. But then I basically I could add onto it. So I didn't like where it was. So I would add, there's like a mesh backing to it. So I just would, like, cut out a new piece of mesh and then figure out how to stitch onto it. And then I would keep working a little bit more. And so on the back, side, there are all of these additive pieces, which is, for me, really great. And I really wanted to break out of the square and the rectangle, and I really wanted to, even further in the future, try to even work more sculpturally. And
Nice. And is this is this something right now, like, could you describe to us, like, what is in your studio and on your canvas right now, or your loom, I should say, what you're working on?
It is. So after this piece, I had to put I've had to put things on hold because in my day job as an art teacher, I'm trying to wrap up my school year, but I'm definitely will be getting back to working in this way. And I feel like this piece was successful in what I wanted to do, and I learned so much. And then, so yes, it will continue to be, it will continue.
And what is different since the shelter in, what is different about your practice? Are you finding yourself either more in the studio, or is Zoom occupying you and you don't have the chance to create as much? What's the different part of your making?
Well, so I am an art teacher by day, and most of my and a parent, and so most of my weaving and work takes place in the evenings, usually from like 9 to midnight. Quarantine has been great because I actually had more time to work.
Interesting.
So it's been nice. And when you have not a whole lot of time to make things become very precious. So, for example, I couldn't let go of this piece because I had spent so much time on it already. I couldn't throw it away. So, but it has allowed me to have more time to experiment, and I don't feel as rushed. Sometimes there are good things about feeling rushed, and sometimes it's good to have both. So I definitely have enjoyed it. My room is all of my things now. Um, you know, it's sort of funny. It's filled with all kinds of things, but it's good, and I'm happy to be in here, and I'm happy to have the time, and yeah.
Good. And what about the people part? Are you missing all the art parties and the art openings and the obligations socially? Or are you like, this is fantastic, I love the break?
I do miss the contact. For someone like me who has the childs to deal with, the little children's childs to deal with, and I'm not always able to go out and do those things.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, like I'm going to take a couple of art classes for myself right now. I can do that now in times of COVID. And so in some ways I feel like I can participate a little bit more to a certain extent. It also just feels very good to have a forced quiet, frankly. And to be a little unscheduled and to think about what is important. I don't know that I feel like that's necessarily changed the focus of what I make, but I certainly appreciate the time and the value. It's also interesting because weaving is something that as a repetitive action is very therapeutic for me, and I process my day through it. And because things have been so busy, and I really haven't been weaving for like the past week and a half to 2 weeks, you know, my life feels a little bit more stressful because it also is a way for me to release some of my own anxiety about things.
Right. Well, I love that you have the designated window. Yeah, it's just surprising to hear from artists who have to juggle their home life and their work life, that they're actually getting squeezed out of a lot of studio time. I hope you get back to it as school closes up. Can we talk a little bit about your background as an artist, and when you entered fiber arts and left behind other practices?
Mm-hmm. So I went to school at the School of the Art Institute, and I studied printmaking, photography, bookmaking, a lot of things. But mostly, you know, I initially actually had started out wanting to go into fashion, but did not feel like I had enough confidence to pursue that. And I ended up basically going into a lot of different things. So, and textiles as well. I taught for several years. I really loved teaching, and quite a bit later, I ended up wanting to go into costume and theater design. So I went back to graduate school at Northwestern and got my degree in theater design, specifically in costumes. So none of these things involved fiber at some point. And I really honestly didn't make a lot of art for a very long time. I was being an art teacher, but I was also being a costume designer for a while. And it really wasn't until probably 5 years ago that I picked up there was in my art room, there was a loom, and I really wanted to figure out how it worked. And I had done probably some weaving, and I basically happened to find someone's work then on Instagram that I really liked.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to New York and took like a 6-hour class and have been weaving ever since.
Wonderful. I love it.
And I think it allows me to, one, there's no mess, right? So I was a printmaker for a while, and I never did printmaking when I left school because I needed so much equipment and I needed to go somewhere else to do it. And so I don't need a lot of space or equipment for what I do. Also interesting, I have in my house, at some point, most rooms have been my studio, but I have been slowly pushed out by my family into this basically little closet of a space. But it's actually the space I make the most art in. When I had my bigger rooms, I didn't really make a lot of art in there. So there are times when I'll sit here and complain about my little tiny studio, but I have now come to realize that even if I had a bigger space, I may not actually make as much art as I do in here.
So the constraints are your friend, the constraints of the loop, the constraints of time and space. Oh, I love that. And I'm so glad Yeah, that you made that pivot, because I really deeply enjoy your work, and that shows that you have a multidisciplinary background, because it looks very painterly, it looks very sculptural. There's a lot of elements at play with it. And last question, who are your inspirations? Who, either working on current bodies or old bodies of work, what artists do you look to for inspiration?
Wow. So there are like the textile greats of like the Annie Albers. There are lots of painters that I look at, gosh, let's see what do I even
Looks
have
like
out?
you're
There's a
looking around your room for the artists who are inspiring you.
Well, I'm looking at like my little books here. What are the books that I have out? I have a Clifford Steele book in here. I have a Rothko book in here. I look for a lot of colors and color palettes when I'm there's like a Carrie James Marshall book. I have this whole in my day when I can have all of the time. I would love to do like readings of painters, based on different painters. So that's kind of, I have a thing here of like Navajo rugs. I have, it's kind of hard to see all of the things in here
I
right
love that you keep it all by you so that you can pull it out and refer to it as you
now.
work.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Georgia O'Keeffe is in here. All kinds of things. Local, far away. Yeah,
Looking at a lot of work as you work, you keep yourself inspired.
I do.
Awesome. Well, Amy, I'm super grateful for your time today. I appreciate that you were willing to jump on Zoom with us.
Thank you so much.